Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and a very good day to all of you. Today let's talk about the famous poet John Keats. John Keats, 1795-1821. John Keats, who died tragically young, transformed personal suffering into some of the most beautiful poetry in the English language, particularly through his mastery of the ode and his philosophy of negative capability. Today, he stands as a central figure in Romanticism, celebrated for his profound sensitivity, sensuous imagery, and an enduring vision of beauty as truth. John Keats was born in 1795 in London, England, and he died in 1821 in Rome, Italy, aged just 25. His nationality is English, and the movement he belongs to is Romanticism. Second generation of romantic poets he is. And his profession, poet, critic. The cause of his death, tuberculosis, which was then called a consumption. Childhood and early life of John Keats. He was born to Thomas Keats, a hostler at an inn, Swan and Hoop, and his mother, Frances Jennings Keats. His family was middle class, but modest. They were not aristocrats, which influenced the Keats' insecurity about his social status. He had three younger siblings, George, Tom, and Fanny. In 1799, his father died unexpectedly after falling from a horse. In 1810, his mother died of tuberculosis. After these losses, John Keats and his siblings became wards of the court, and their finances were controlled by trustees, which created financial instability his entire life. John Keats was initially hot-tempered, energetic, physically robust, and passionate. Later developed into a reflective, sensitive, and a deeply emotional personality. He was an avid reader of mythology, history, and literature. Education, Enfield Academy, his schooling, then attended the progressive Clark School at Enfield. Teachers discovered his love for reading. He devoured Spenser's The Faerie Queene, Homer, that is Chapman's translation, Shakespeare, Milton, etc. John Keats' medical training. He was apprenticed to Thomas Hammond, an apothecary surgeon, in the years 1811 to 1813, and studied surgery at the Guy's Hospital, London, and became a licensed apothecary in 1816. Although he preferred dissections, treatments, and even small surgeries, he found the profession emotionally draining. In 1816, he abandoned medicine to devote himself fully to poetry, a painful but a courageous transition. Personal life and relationships. His romantic life. His most famous relationship was with Fanny Brown, his neighbor in Hampstead. The love was intense but complicated by his poverty, his worsening tuberculosis, his inability to marry. Passionate letter to her, "My love has made me selfish," are among the greatest romantic correspondences in English literature. John Keats' close friends include Charles Brown, Legend, Benjamin Haydon, Shelley, and Joseph Saban, who cared for him in Rome. Shelley adored Keats and wrote the work Adonis in his memory. Personality of John Keats. Sensitive yet a strong-willed, extremely self-critical, generous, insightful, humorous with a close friends, determined to develop his poetical character. He believed in negative capability, the ability to remain in uncertainty without seeking rational explanations. Now let's go to the literary career and major works of John Keats. Early works, poems, 1817, a debut collection that experiments with the classical forms and introduces Keats' early fascination with the beauty, mythology, and imaginative escape. The next work, on first looking into Chapman's Homer, a sonnet expressing the overwhelming joy and a sense of discovery Keats felt when experiencing Homer's epics through Chapman's vigorous translation. The next work, Endymion, 1818, a long mythological romance exploring the idealistic quest for perfect beauty through the story of the shepherd, Endymion's love for moon goddess. Now his masterpieces, 1819, Ode to a Nightingale, a meditation on mortality in which the poet longs to escape human suffering through the immortal, transcendent song of the nightingale. Ode on a Grecian, a philosophical reflection on how art captures eternal beauty, contrasted with the fleeting nature of human life. The next work, Ode to Psyche, a celebration of the soul's inner world, imagining Psyche as a newly discovered goddess worthy of personal, intimate worship. Ode on Melancholy, a concise exploration of how joy and sorrow are inseparably intertwined in a human experience. The next work, Ode on Indolence, a reflective poem in which the speaker resists the calls for ambition, love, and poetry, embracing a moment of calm detachment. The next work, Ode to Autumn, a richly sensuous celebration of autumn as a season of fullness, ripeness, and a quiet acceptance of life's natural cycles. Now going to the narrative poems and other major works. First of all, we have Lamia, a narrative poem about a beautiful serpent woman whose enchanted love with a mortal man ends tragically, symbolizing the tension between fantasy and reason. The next work, The Eve of St. Agnes, a romantic tale blending sensual imagery and a medieval atmosphere to depict a young lovers fleeting into an uncertain but a hopeful future. The next work, La Bella Dame's Marzi, a haunting ballad about a night devastated by a mysterious supernatural woman who symbolizes destructive, unattainable desire. The next work, Hyperion, an unfinished work, an epic fragment retelling the fall of the Titans, emphasizing themes of transformation, artistic evolution, and the birth of new orders. The next work, The Fall of Hyperion, is an unfinished work, a more philosophical revision of Hyperion that questions the role of the poet and the nature of visionary suffering. Now talking about Keats' letters. John Keats' letters to Fanny Brown, his brothers Reynolds, Bailey, and others. A body of writing that articulates John Keats' deepest thoughts on poetry, imagination, beauty, love, suffering, and a negative capability, forming a poetic theory as important as his verse. Annus Mirabilis, that is Miracle Year, 1819. Keats wrote most of his masterpieces in a single year, Ode, all written in 1819, Ode to a Nightingale, Ode on a Grecian, Ode to Psyche, Ode on Melancholy, Ode on Indolence, Ode to Autumn. His other major works include Lamia, The Eve of St. Agnes, La Bella Dame Sans Mercy, Hyperion and the Fall of Hyperion, Unfinished Epics, and in numerous letters, some considered philosophical masterpieces. Posthumous publication. Most recognition came after his death. He was nearly unknown while living. Going to the key themes in John Keats' works, transience and impermanence. Human life is short, art and beauty endure. Best seen in Ode on a Grecian and Ode to Autumn. Beauty as truth, truth as beauty. The search for ideal beauty connects to philosophical inquiry. Beauty represents moral and emotional truths. Sensuousness and the five senses. Rich imagery appeals to sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. The Eve of St. Agnes and the Ode to a Nightingale exemplify this. Escapism versus reality. Flight into imagination as a refuge from suffering, but the return to reality is often painful. Mortality and suffering. Influenced by his mother's and a brother's deaths and his own sickness. Negative capability, acceptance of uncertainty, ambiguity, and mystery. Romantic Hellenism, love for Greek mythology and a classical form. Love and a desire, passion mixed with despair, idealization mixed with loss. Now talking about John Keats' political and social engagement. He was not overtly political, unlike Shelley or Byron. However, indirect political involvement, associated with Leigh Hunt, a radical journalist who opposed monarchy and corruption. Conservative journals, Blackwood's Magazine's Quarterly Review, attacked Keats because of his association with Leigh Hunt. The famous Cockney School attacks were politically motivated. Class prejudice. Views reflected in his poetry valued human freedom, imagination, empathy. He opposed the oppressive structures indirectly through themes of liberation and transcendence. More focused on psychological and aesthetic freedom than political revolution. Talking about his honors and awards, John Keats received no honors or awards or official recognition during his lifetime. He died uncelebrated, believing he was a failure. His posthumous recognition, his gravestone in Rome, designed by Sebon, reads, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water." Today he is considered one of the greatest lyric poets in English literature. He is memorialized by Keats House in Hampstead, or Keats Shelley Memorial House in Rome, statues of plaques and numerous academic societies, annual conferences and literary festivals. Now talking about the legacy of John Keats, he is one of the most studied poets globally. Master of the ode form, inspired Tennyson, Rosset, Hopkins, Yeats, Eliot, Frost, and modern writers. His philosophical legacy, negative capability, and profoundly influenced psychoanalysis, Freud, Benin. Modern literary theory, phenomenology, aesthetic philosophy, cultural impact, films, operas, plays about his life. For example, Bright Star, released in 2009. His letters are considered equal to his poetry in literary value. John Keats was only 150 centimeter tall. He was small and compact, but very strong physically. He found fist fights in schools and was known as a fighter. He studied dissection extensively and could perform minor surgeries. His medical background sharpened his understanding of mortality and suffering. He predicted his own death. He told his friends that his throat bleeding meant tuberculosis and that he had no chance of recovery. He wrote his greatest poems in an astonishing burst of creativity at age 23 to 24. His publishers feared financial loss and hesitated to publish him. None of his books sold well during his lifetime. Byron mocked him, thinking his poetry too sentimental. Later generations rejected Byron's judgment. His close friend Joseph Sebon sacrificed his own career to accompany John Keats to Rome and nurse him until his death. John Keats refused the opium near the end because he didn't want to dull his mind. He wanted an epitaph. Here lies one whose name was written in water, showing how deeply he feared oblivion. He read voraciously even as his health declined. Shakespeare was his greatest inspiration. John Keats believed a poet has no identity. He becomes everything he imagines. Chameleon poet. Now talking about the present importance of John Keats. Academic significance, essential part of Romanticism studies. His letters widely cited in literary theory, major figure in aesthetic philosophy. His contemporary relevance, that is themes of mortality, beauty and suffering, resonate with the modern anxieties. His search for meaning in uncertainty fits postmodern and post-colonial thought. His sensuous imagery influences contemporary poetry and film. His cultural influence, quoted frequently in music, cinema, popular culture, considered a symbol of the artist misunderstood in his own time.